Hi, my name's Max, and this is the first in a series of videos I'm going to do on rare chords and how to use them. Rare chords meaning chords that you don't hear very often at all in most genres of music. Although if you listen to maybe jazz or modern classical, maybe you do hear some of them more often, but most people not. So the one we're going to look at today is a major 7 sharp 5 chord, or augmented major 7, depending on how you like to call it. It sounds like this. Quite a sound. So before I get into talking about what it is and how we're going to use it, I've composed 3 little fragments of music that utilize the chord in several ways. So let's just start by listening to one of those, and then I'll introduce the structure of the chord and how we get to actually use it. Okay, so before we look at exactly what was going on in that example, we're just going to understand the structure of the chord, which is obviously quite simple, just given the name, major 7 sharp 5, or augmented major 7. For those that don't already know, a major 7th chord is 1, 3, 5, 7, meaning the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th note of a major scale put together. Those are scale degrees we're talking about. If you don't understand that sort of thing about what scale degrees are about, I will have a video talking about that shortly, but I won't go over it today. So if you know that, 1, 3, 5, 7, then an augmented major 7 or major 7 sharp 5 would just be 1, 3, sharp 5, and 7, and you get that crazy sound. There's a number of different ways that you can use these chords, and there's probably many ways of using them that I don't know. I just know what I know, and I'll share with you the way that I do it. I love the sound of the chord, so I try to use it in arrangements and compositions all the time because I just like to hear it. So I have a few ideas about it. In the example we just heard, it begins with E major, and then it goes to E major 7 sharp 5. Now, we can't quite make a principle out of that, just saying, okay, well, we have the one chord, then we have the one chord with the sharp 5, but what it's really doing is, if we look at the next chord, is the 4 chord of the key. So what we're doing here is actually playing this chord as a 5 chord of some target. You may know that usually on the 5 chord in any key, a dominant chord gets built and it pulls you, generally speaking, if we're talking functional harmony, it pulls you to the 1 chord. So this is the same thing, except instead of a dominant 7th chord, it's a major 7 sharp 5. A different kind of feel. And interestingly, if you take a look at the chord and take the root off it, I'm playing here, my frets are 7, 6, 5, 4. My root is E, so I'm going to take that E off. This is an A flat, or G sharp, major chord going into an A major chord. It's the whole triad just moving up a half step, and now I put the bass in with it. Right. So in my little composition thing there, I went like this from this chord and dropped that note. The 3rd of the chord becomes a 2, the 2nd of the chord, so that I could end up in that voicing for the A. Obviously that's not an essential move, but I thought it was a nice little motion that ended up getting into a strong voicing on the A chord there on the 4 chord. So then at the end of that same progression, the chord appears again. One of the last chords there is this F major 7, and the melody comes down, and then we have the chord, and now it's resolving to the standard major chord. So that's the opposite move as it was going before. So we have the one chord with the sharp 5, major 7, and then natural 1. and the beginning was 1 major chord, 1 major 7 sharp 5. So here what's happening? Well, in this case we're just using the major 7 sharp 5 as a decorated 1 chord, basically. So we're expecting when we hear that F chord, because we've just come from the F sharp 7 into F, we're expecting to hear a E major right now. And we do, but it's got the tension of the sharp 5 and the major 7, and then they resolve. So that's the second way to use these chords, is as a resolution chord. Either you're going to resolve to that chord and just let it hang there, or you'll resolve to it and then resolve itself, so to speak. The sharp 5 will become a 5 and the 7 becomes a 1, or however you want to do it. So in the first example, we had it acting as the 5 of some chord. And in this example, it's just a substitute for the 1, or delaying the resolution of the 1, you could say. So let's take a listen to this next example, and this time we use this major 7 sharp 5, but in a different way. So what's going on in this case is that the chord, the major 7 sharp 5, is still acting as a 5 chord. However, the bass note of the chord is not the root. This is the first one that we encounter in that little composition. It's E flat, augmented major 7, and it's going to a C minor. You can hear the resolution. So the chord we would expect to be leading us into C minor would be its 5th, G, so G7. And that's still what's happening. It's just that if you look at the top of this chord, it is a G, GBD triad, with an E flat in the bass. The E flat is the flat 13 or flat 6 of G. And so I think of the chord as, in this case, a G7 flat 13, but the flat 13 is in the bass, funny enough. But it's fulfilling that function. It's sounding like this, but a little bit hipper. So looking at the tones compared to G, flat 6, 1, 3, 5, so there's no flat 7 in it, so it's not truly a G7, it's just a G major with a flat 6 or flat 13. But it sure sounds good. So the next thing to note about this is that an easy way to think of it is that if you're targeting some chord, you go 3 half steps higher and build a major 7 sharp 5, and you end up producing this effect where you get, it's like a 5 chord with a flat 13 resolving to a 1, but with a cool voicing. So we had 1, then we had 1 flat 13, and then 4. Then later in the progression we have another major 7 sharp 5. It comes out of this C chord. So this is the 4 chord. This is one of those Neapolitan chords, if you ever heard of that. If you haven't heard of a Neapolitan chord, look it up, it's pretty cool. Then this is major 7 sharp 5. Again, this chord is built 1, 2, 3 half steps above the target, which is 1 in this case, home, G, we're in G minor. So this B flat major 7 sharp 5 is resolving to G minor because it's not really a B flat chord, it's actually a D chord. It's a D triad, which is D is the 5 of G, right? A D triad with the flat 6 in the bass, just like before. So the first time we're going from 1 and we're targeting the 4 chord, so we put its 5, and we get there. And then in the end, we're targeting 1, so we put its 5, and we get there. So that's a neat little trick. You just go up 3 half steps from your target, and play a major 7 sharp 5, but remember that it's not really, that's not what the chord is. If you want to know what the root of that chord is, at least conceptually, it's the third of the major 7 sharp 5. So if I'm targeting C minor and I put the E flat major 7 sharp 5, it's this note, the G, that's the root. That's the way I'm thinking of it. That's how I can make sense of this. This is the full chord. Like that. So now let's take a look at one more example which uses the major 7 sharp 5 chord in the same way, more or less, as the previous, but we get to it in a different way. So we'll take a listen first and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so in this example, we're in A now. We start on the 1 chord. We start on A major 7. Then it goes to A major 7 sharp 5, the augmented 5th there. And then here. So we've just talked about what is this chord functioning as? Well, it could be functioning as an A chord of some sort, as we looked at before. It could be pulling us to the 4 chord. But in this case, it's doing that 5 thing, meaning the target chord is actually this, which is an F sharp minor, but it's in first inversion, meaning the flat 3s in the bass. So what would we expect to pull us to F sharp? Well, C sharp 7, it's 5 would do the trick. So this chord, as we learned before, when you go 3 frets up and play a major 7 sharp 5 chord, you get the same effect. Except now we're keeping the F sharp in first inversion, so the root note, or the bass note doesn't change. So the A chord, A major 7, had A in the bass. This C sharp chord, although it looks like an A augmented major 7, has an A in the bass, and the F sharp has an A in the bass. The same thing happens starting on this D major 7, the exact same move. D major 7, D augmented major 7. So you think, okay, this is 3 half steps higher than something. What is it? 3 half steps higher than B. And indeed, it does resolve to B. So that's the same move. First time though, keeping the bass note the same through 3 chords there. And the second time, again, turning a major 7 into a major 7 sharp 5. However, the chord in my mind changes identity at that point. It's no longer a D chord. Now it's an F sharp chord, right? The third of this chord, third of the D, which is F sharp in this case, is the real root of this chord, meaning the 5 chord of our target. So this is something amazing about chords if it's new to you, which is that in different contexts, the same set of notes will perform totally different functions and even sound quite different. Beyond the examples that I've given here, there are many, many other possibilities, a lot of which revolve around these chords being rootless voicings of other chords. They can stand for all sorts of chords if you imagine that the root note is not actually contained in the shape itself. If that's a concept that's unfamiliar to you, playing chords without roots in them, it's beyond the scope of this video, so maybe I'll do another video sometime talking about rootless voicings and all the ways that various chords can stand for other chords and so on. But for now, if you would like any further analysis on the progressions in this lesson, because there's quite a few cool moves in those progressions that weren't covered by talking about major 7 sharp 5 chords, I'd be happy to do another video just talking about those progressions and how they work. If you're interested in that, you can just leave me a comment below, or if you have any other questions, that's fine too. And yeah, if you got benefit from the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll do a bunch more of these rare chord videos. And the PDF that, there's a PDF below in the description where you can learn to play the examples that I played earlier in this video. So you can try to analyze them yourself and get your fingers moving, because there's some pretty interesting shapes there. It's kind of fun to play. Hope that was helpful. Have a great rest of your day.